tough month for Facebook, and now the social media platform is facing yet another lawsuit, and this time it has to do with the type of ads people are allowed to put out on its platform and the way that they're allowed to target those ads. Now, this specifically has to do with the housing industry and how Facebook has allegedly enabled members of the housing industry to put out discriminatory ads. I'll explain. In the lawsuit, which was filed in federal court in New York, several fair housing groups accused Facebook of allowing landlords and real estate companies to illegally tailor their advertisement audiences on the basis of sex, family status, number of children, and other factors. So let me give you some examples. Let's say you are a landlord, you have a building that has multiple units up for rent, and you want to put out an ad on Facebook and target that ad to certain audiences. This group, the National Fair Housing Alliance, is arguing that Facebook has these predetermined groups like disabled vets, for instance, or single moms, that they can exclude from seeing those very advertisements. So Facebook provided the fake realtors with pre-populated lists of groups they could choose to exclude from seeing the ads. Now let's stop for a second. When we say fake realtors, we're talking about the group that investigated Facebook. So the National Fair Housing Alliance did this investigation by posing as landlords or realtors. Obviously they're not, but they wanted to see whether or not they could put out ads that discriminate against certain groups of people. Let's continue. So they choose to exclude from seeing the ads, including women or men or families with children. They could also opt to exclude people with certain interests, including disabled veterans, disabled parking permits, or learning English as a second language. Now, how does Facebook determine whether or not you fall into those predetermined groups? It's based on what you post on your page or what you like on your page. So if you are a single mom, for instance, and you're posting about being a single mom, well then Facebook will include you in that group, which will then get excluded from seeing certain housing ads. Now this is problematic because there are literally federal laws against it. So let's go to that. The groups behind the lawsuit claim Facebook's practices violate the Federal Fair Housing Act, which prohibits disseminating housing ads that indicate any preference, limitation, or discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, family status, or national origin, or an intention to make any such preference, limitation, or discrimination. So that is a very clear federal law. And it seems as though through this investigation, the organization does have a case against Facebook. For its part, Facebook is denying any wrongdoing. They say that the lawsuit is without merit, but we'll see how it goes. Back in 2016, I believe, ProPublica, a journalistic organization, did their own investigation into this and did find wrongdoing on Facebook's part. Facebook claimed that they would change things and that they wouldn't do this anymore, but it appears that they have continued doing this. So we'll see how it plays out in court.
They want, obviously, this practice to end, and that, it would seem, Facebook could do fairly quickly. They also want money, of which Facebook has plenty. So we'll see how this ultimately comes down. But you hate sometimes to see these big lawsuits, but on the other hand, sometimes that's the best way to make a point. And they want to make the point, I think, in a very heavy way, and they deserve to be able to make the point in a big way, and that means a big fine.
Well, I'm just wondering from this, like Facebook is already in an enormous amount of scrutiny with Cambridge Analytica with what's going on with that. But it makes you wonder if this is what's happening with advertising for housing, like what stage does this go on to with the next advertiser? Like how many advertisers are able to discriminate based on whatever they look at? Because for years, I mean, one of the comments, it was Diane Hook, who is one of the plaintiff's attorneys, she said for years they've been abusing their platform and violating civil rights laws, but have just kind of played dumb on the instance, right? And I know that seems like a small statement to make on a huge company, but look how much they've gotten away with. Like they literally gave information over to a research publication so that they could manipulate advertisement in order to skew political votes and in order to manipulate minds of people who are using their platform. But the reason that I have trouble over this is because I don't even know where to start and what the answer is. Because with Facebook, the way it started, it was always going to lead to a level of at what point are they overreaching? At what point do they know so much about you that they can manipulate? I mean, I'm always hesitant to criticize because Facebook has turned out to be one of my primary platforms to portray news, right? And my audience itself has continuously messaged me saying, I no longer see your posts. There's something happened where it no longer pops up on my feed. Facebook became so big so fast that they had to work their way back in order to cleanse what they were pushing forward. That's why this whole fake news cleanse happened, where certain videos were being hidden and certain videos weren't, and certain videos were being pushed and those weren't. So I really don't know what the answer is. I just think that it's an example of a company that grew so large that it began to allow manipulation factors to come in to make more money, and now they're trying to right those wrongs.
Right.
Yeah. It's a great point that it's one of those companies that we didn't know a lot about. We kind of thought it was sort of neutral. Things would show up on the feed as they did. It's a little like a lot of other internet companies that also are managing the way videos are seen and information gets out there. This is a business, though, that's all about data. That's what they sell.
Right.
They sell, we know all this about our group. The reason you go on Facebook and it's free is because you're the product, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so your information is being sold to advertisers who find that you're an adventurous person, so they'll serve you maybe an SUV ad or an outdoorsy vacation ad or something like that. But what's happening is that, as Francis says, we don't really understand how Wild West the whole thing has been.
Yeah.
They've been able to
Right.
do whatever they want. There's going to have to be some controls put on all of that targeting.
Right, and also, regardless of where you work or what kind of company you are, you have to follow federal laws. And in regard to these housing advertisements, you have to follow federal laws. You can't discriminate against certain groups of people. Now, that's very different from being a specific brand that wants to target an audience that's more likely to purchase your product. So if you're Huggies, of course it makes sense to tailor, the settings and target certain people who are more likely. Advertisers have always done that. That's fine. But it's a different story when it comes to housing. If you are excluding certain ethnic groups or certain individuals who maybe the LGBT community, that's obviously discriminatory. You're not allowed to do it based on federal law. And Facebook had already been caught doing this. They said that they would correct their wrongs and they didn't do it. And to your point, Mark, last year, Facebook brought in $40 billion, that's with a B, $40 billion worth of revenue. And all of it was brought in through advertisement, okay? Yes, it is a free service for us, but nothing's really free. What we're essentially doing is giving away our data so Facebook could utilize it for advertisers who want to optimize and target their ads. That's the way the business works. And yeah, there needs to be some oversight to make sure that that kind of process isn't being abused to our detriment.
Last point on this, the internet world is full of these startups that kind of came up as rebels, and that was sort of a cool thing, right? It was birthed in some college dorm, and then they came up, and before you knew it, you had crowdfunded, and it became a big deal. And it's Facebook, and it's Uber, and it's Google, and so on. But because they came up that way, they had a certain romance about them that allowed them to get away with a lot of stuff. Look at Uber. I mean, they completely ignored local restrictions and legislative demands associated with permitting and all. They just went into markets all over the world and just started this with this app. And they ultimately were brushed back. They had to pull back on that. And that is what you're seeing with Facebook. I think they feel as though in the beginning they could do all of these things without much oversight. Now there is oversight. As Anna says, they're in violation of federal law. Hey, there's a new sheriff in town, and they'll have to clean up that act.
You just watched the video by the Young Turks, home of the revolution. If you'd like to get a lot more than that, get the full show by becoming a member. tytnetwork.com/join.